All right, high rollers. He won the WSOP Tournament of Champions, has won a WSOP bracelet, was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2009. He helped create both Party Poker and the World Poker Tour, is the voice of the WPT, and was named Poker's top ambassador in 2006 by Card Player magazine. He delivered the eulogy for troubled poker superstar Stu Ungar. It's been quite a career indeed, and now he's got a new book out detailing it all. Life's a Gamble by Mike Sexton. Mike, welcome to the show, man. Thanks for being our high roller today.
Oh, my pleasure, Derek. Glad to be here.
I understand you're fresh off your first book signing at the World Series of Poker for Life's a Gamble. Your wife Pam tells me it went extremely well.
Yeah, yesterday, books went on sale for the first time. Went well, and I think people are excited about the book. I'm excited about it, and I think that everybody that plays poker would love it. And people that like to golf or gamble or like any kind of action at all, I think will actually love the book because it's not a how-to book, but there's a lot of life lessons in the book. And, a lot of gambling stories and about some of the iconic legends of the game. There's separate chapters dedicated to Stu Ungar, Chip Reese, Doyle Brunson, Puggy Pearson, Billy Baxter. Because of that, I think everyone will just love it.
Wondering about these book signings. We see you on TV. We sometimes think we know you because of your public persona. Do these things come naturally to you, or do you have to sort of put on a game face on? I can imagine that it's quite rewarding in many ways.
It is. I still really enjoy meeting the public. It's fun out on the World Poker Tour when you go to stops that are not Las Vegas or California or some of the iconic poker places in the world where you get to meet people that don't travel to those kind of places much, and they're very excited when your event comes to town. They're excited to meet Vince and I, and it's just fun to talk to the public, meet the public, and I still really enjoy that part of it. So to me, it's very enjoyable. I'm still very happy to meet the public, and I thoroughly enjoy it.
Well, I can't wait to read this book. I'm a poker junkie. I love narratives. I just got through Ghosts at the Table by Des Wilson. That was fascinating. I can only imagine some of the stories that you share. You talked about the characters that you focus on in the book. You must have some great anecdotes about Stu and Doyle in there.
Yeah, actually, probably most of the stories in the book are about Stewie and Doyle's involved in them, and these guys, they're just one of a kind. They're old school gamblers, and I mean real gamblers. That gambled sky high back in the day, and it's just fun to have been around and witnessed some of the things I saw and participated in some of the things I did, and those are brought out in the book.
How much of a card savant, and I know you get asked this a lot, but just quickly on Stu Ungar, how much of a card savant was he? This guy was a bit of a genius at the table, wasn't he?
Well, he was a genius in life. He had a photographic memory, a genius IQ, and because of those things, it gave him, a leg up on everybody else at the table. And I like to call him the Bobby Fischer of cards because I really do think he was a savant in that regard. Didn't matter what the card game is. I mean, we all know that he was the greatest gin rummy player to ever walk the planet Earth. Certainly, if you talk to any great gin rummy player that ever played him, they'll rank him number one without question. And he came to Las Vegas, just to play gin rummy. And back then, every high-stakes poker player was a phenomenal gin rummy player. I mean, every one of them. Chip Reese and Doyle Brunson and Puggy Pearson and Amarillo Slim and Sarge Ferris and all these guys were phenomenal gin rummy players. And Stewie came out here and just mowed them all down like grass. And he started spotting them. He let them look at the bottom card on the deck. He let them look at the bottom two cards on the deck. He would put them on all three games across in Hollywood gin. And it didn't matter what he spotted him, what he did. He ended up beating him until nobody would play him anymore. So then he turned to high-stakes poker, and obviously, as we know, the first time he entered the main event of the World Series, he won it. Second time he won it, and the rest is history.
Did you have a sense when you were younger, Mike, that you were witnessing something real special?
Yeah, you had a sense every time you watched him play, especially if you get to sweat and play gin rummy like I did a number of times. Because when he picks up his cards, most people sort their cards into melds, and you put the suits together or the numbers together. He never moved a card once he picked them up. If he picked them up, they stayed that way, where they're all mixed up in his hand, because he never wanted to give any tells off to his opponent as to what he had when he picked cards out, when he discarded or whatnot. So, that alone to me impressed me. And he played so fast, it was just unbelievable how fast the guy played. You can name every card in your opponent in his opponent's hand. I mean, it's spooky to watch the guy.
Yeah, that would be spooky. And I was going to ask you this later, but I'll ask you now. I'm wondering, you've been around a long time. You've seen a lot of things. What do you think and what do you make of the players today, the Fedor Holses, the Jason Merciers of the world? I mean, these guys are pretty special too. The game has evolved so much, hasn't it?
Oh yeah, these guys are very special. Today's players are phenomenal players, no question about it. And in fairness, back in Stewie's day, he was the most aggressive player at the table every time he sat down. He was the table captain, did the most raising. And, we didn't have the 3 and 4 bets pre-flops like they've got nowadays, where they've taken aggression to another level. And so Stewie was in king there. Now, obviously, if he played today, he might not be the most aggressive players at the table because there's plenty out there. So he would have to adjust his game. But I believe he can read opponents as good or better than anybody. And it's just natural instincts, I believe, are above everybody else. So I still think he would be the top player even if he were with us today. But, I'll tell you one thing. These young guys, they're tough, they're aggressive, and they're great players. So, he definitely have his hands full, but I'd still rank him at the top.
So many career highlights. You've been around a long time. You've done so many things. You've had so much success. Do you have a one or two that stand out for you? I mean, the bracelet is special. That Tournament of Champions must have been pretty nice too.
Yeah, both of those were very special. The first bracelet I won in 1989 was in 7-card stud 8 or better. Now, to me, that was my world championship because I literally played it every day for a living back in those days. And, I didn't play the main event in the World Series until 1991. So, back then, that event was my world championship. So winning that bracelet was especially meaningful to me. Obviously, as you mentioned, the 2006 Tournament of Champions, that was a phenomenal event where I won $1 million. But what was special about it was when we got down to 3 players, it was me, Mike Matusow, and Daniel Negreanu. Now, Mike Matusow was the defending champion in that tournament. And then Daniel and I, when we got heads up, which was at about midnight, we played till after 7 in the morning. Heads up. It was a 7-hour marathon battle. Really, really a long, long, tough battle. And honestly, it wasn't until after 4 a.m. till either one of us was within $300,000 of ever being all in. I mean, Daniel and I playing small ball. I was happy playing it. So we had a long, drawn-out battle. And fortunately for me, I came out on top. And now, of course, with all Daniel's success out there in the world, the #1 tournament player of all time and all this and that, what he wins and what he's done in poker, I pull for him every time now because every time he wins something else, it makes me look better because I beat him in that tournament.
Well, that was a special moment. And three-handed, you talked about Mike Matusow. I remember watching the broadcast. You made one of the greatest calls ever, and Daniel Negreanu just sort of rubbed it in Mike's face.
Well, he did rub it in Mike's face, and that was just to put him on tilt a little bit, and it worked, obviously. And if those haven't seen it, you can go to YouTube and watch that particular hand. There was a hand where I'm in the big blind with a 7-3 offsuit. The flop comes like Queen 8-3 with 2 hearts, and all 3 of us were in the pot. Daniel checked, and I checked, and Mike Matusow checked on the button. And he had just called on the button before the flop. He didn't raise before the flop. Now, on the turn, an ace comes off. Now, Daniel checks, and I checked, and now here comes Mike Matusow bet about 40,000 or something like that. And Daniel got out, and I called him with 2 threes. Now a jack comes off on the river. So now, the flop came Queen 9-3, excuse me. Now a jack comes off on the river. And I checked, and now here comes Matusow betting about 75,000. And I called him with 2 threes. I knew he didn't have an ace because he didn't raise before the flop. I knew he didn't have a queen because he didn't bet on the flop. He'd also bet 2 nines if he'd had those. Now, there was a chance I thought he could have made a straight. He might have had 10-8. He might have made king 10, where he's going to win the pot. But other than that, I thought he had 7-8 or something like that. And I thought it was a pretty easy call to make with 2 threes. And I called him, and then Daniel just started waving a towel and said, "Oh, he got you. What a play. Call him a bottom pair in that spot," and blah, blah, blah. And Matusow's eyes bugged out. It was just sort of a fun moment. But really, I get praised for that call all the time. But if you think about how the hand was played, before the flop, on the turn, etc., I think it's not that hard a call to make. I really don't.
Well, I think for a guy like you, maybe, but for a guy like me, the average player, that's a very tough call to make, and especially at that moment, three-handed. I got the sense watching that, Mike, that you're a competitive guy, and it meant a lot to you because you just mentioned it. You're facing off against 2 of the best ever.
Well, it really did, and facing those guys and beating them, and especially playing Daniel in such a long, really tough battle and coming out on top, it was meaningful to me, and it was also meaningful because before the tournament started, I announced I was going to donate half of whatever I won to charity. So I knew if I won, I'd be able to impact a lot of worthwhile charities, and I was fortunate to win it. Then I donated $500,000 to 5 different charities, Special Olympics, Paralyzed Veterans of America and Wounded Warriors and some others. So, it's very special that I was able to do that and provide some good to the community.
The book is called Life's a Gamble. I'm wondering, the Hall of Fame in 2009. Where does the book rank in terms of your poker achievements? And what did you get out of writing it?
Well, it's been a project in the works for several years now because a number of players and a number of people said, you should write a book. You've got all these stories. You're the only one of the few connections of the real old school gamblers of the 70s and 80s that started the World Series, and you're close to all of them. You got all these stories. Who's going to tell these stories if you don't do it? So I thought about that, and I thought, you're right about that. And some of those icons and legends are dying off. Who is going to tell the story? So, I decided to put a book together, and also it was about poker history, because, I tell stories in this book on the first 30 years of the World Series of Poker. Before television came around, some of the things that happened in the main event, what it was like back then. And those stories are fun to read. And then, of course, obviously, I tell the story of Party Poker, the online site that rose to become #1 in the world and was mind-boggling the public on the London Stock Exchange for $8.5 billion, one of the largest floats of all time from a little online poker start that we started. And then, of course, the World Poker Tour came along and changed the poker world forever. It tells that story as well. And it sort of explains how I transitioned from a player to the business side of poker. That accumulation of all those things added up to me being inducted into the Poker Hall of Fame. And as a poker player, there's no higher honor than that. You will never receive a better honor than that because it's not about winning a tournament or having a good year or two. It's about a career achievement award. And I think, that's like any sport, it's the highest honor you can receive when you get in that Sports Hall of Fame, and poker is no different.
It is quite an honor to be in the Hall of Fame. You deserve it. You've had success both on and off the table. When did you realize that, you don't want to be one of these guys that are grinding it out to 24-hour sessions, that sort of thing, playing marathon poker games, that there is a chance to spread your wings and become a business venturist?
Well, it all came about. I was just a player for 20 straight years, where I'm just playing around the clock. And, I always had a dream of wanting to put on the biggest event in poker. That was a multiple game championship event, a really classy things where they paraded in with the flags. And that was my dream to put on in poker. But, as a player, I didn't know how to launch it or anything. And then finally, I won a big tournament at the Four Queens Hotel in 1996. And after winning that tournament, Linda Johnson, who owned Card Player magazine, said, "Hey, I would like to write, an article about that win of yours." So I said, "Sure." So I wrote the article, and she loved it so much she wanted me to become a full-time writer. And so I wrote a column for Card Player for 10 years called Inside Professional Poker, and that column gave me the exposure that I needed to be able to put on my Tournament of Champions, and then that obviously led me to my jobs with Party Poker and the World Poker Tour, and that's how I transcended over. If I had not won that tournament in 1996 and written that article and for Card Player and not become a writer, who knows what would ever happen in my career. I'd still been out there grinding probably as a poker player. But, fortunately for me, becoming a writer was a blessing for me in that it really spearheaded my career.
Well, a lot of hard work, I'm sure, but what do they say? It's in the cards, I guess. Second part of that question was, you've had so much success away from the table. You're a busy guy with all your side ventures. How do you maintain the caliber of play that you do at the table? I mean, you're still playing. I looked at the Hand and Mob today, and there you just cashed at the World Series of Poker.
Well, I did cash, but it was only like one out of the first 5 events or 6 events. But, still it was a cash, and I'm actually on to day 2 today in the 10,000 horse tournament. So who knows? Maybe I have a chance there. But I enjoy playing. Now because I don't have to grind it out for a living. I don't play around the clock like I did for over 20 years. And because of that, it's really fun for me when I get a chance to play now. I have a 7-year-old son, so I don't get a chance to play much when I'm traveling with the World Poker Tour. But when I come back, I'd rather spend time with him than go play poker. So I play probably at least half the events out on the World Poker Tour, and then I'll play, maybe 10 to 12 events at the World Series of Poker. And I enjoy the competition. I love playing against the young guys. And so for me, when I get an opportunity to play big tournaments, it's fun for me. It's not, the grind and the torture that, that it can be if you allow it to be. So because of that, I'm still fortunate. I enjoy playing the game, and I like to mix it up with the young guns and see how I can fare against them.
And lastly, Mike, we're running short on time here. Lastly, I saw you tweet out the other day. You mentioned your son. You were at the ball game, took some time off from the World Series of Poker to get out to the park with him. How has the poker versus family dynamic changed for you over the years?
Well, certainly having my son, it changed my life dramatically. Obviously, I was a pretty big gambler before that, playing high stakes and everything, and getting wild and woolly, and even did a little bit, the first couple years of his life. But now, I've had a wake-up call. I went through a ton of money betting on sports and gambling and doing some stuff, which I'm not proud of. But now I have a whole new perspective on life, and, my life is built around him now. And, my joy is just going to be grow old and watch him grow old and play sports and do whatever he does and just follow his life. So that's exciting for me. To have a child at this late stage of my life is just a blessing, and certainly I'm going to hold on to that blessing and take advantage of it.
Now, this has been a big thrill, Mike. I really appreciate it. Good luck with the book, Life's a Gamble, and good luck at the World Series today and the rest of the summer. Thank you so much, man.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.